NZ Aerosports, Icarus Canopies, now Gyro. That's right, we've rebranded, and Gyro is our next generation. It honours our founder, as that's the name we knew him by, but Gyro also marks the start of a new chapter. And not to be biased, but it's going to be fucking epic. Long story short, we're more us than ever, so if you're new to the sport, or even a Sky God Ninja Turtle, welcome. I think our valiant leader Lucy, Gyro's daughter, says it best.
And we still got that fuck yeah attitude. Rebrand! Woo!
Rebrand woo indeed, Lucy. Anyway, head over to gyro.com for more info and get amongst you legends.
I was 19, broke, unemployed, and sold my girlfriend's canopy for drug money. So I thought I better sew her a new one. What a sentence, and what a story. This describes the humble yet outrageous beginnings of NZ Aerosports, the home of Icarus Canopies, in the words of our founder himself. From getting a paratrooper toy from his mom, watching parachutes at the DZ as a 6-year-old, jumping off the wharf with a parachute made from bed sheets, doing his first jump at 16, sewing his first canopy on a borrowed machine at 19, and starting to sell parachutes out of a garage in 1986, Paul Gyro Martin had an undying love for the sky. Our company started with one man with the wildest of spirits and a true blue sky dream, a renegade. In the time that Gyro created and ran the Icarus Canopies brand until he passed away in 2017, he pushed everything he had to its limits. We miss him, and we always will. Gyro is the next generation of NZ Aerosports. It honors our founder, of course, because it was the name we all knew him by, but Gyro the rebrand also marks the start of a new chapter, our next jump. Gyro is the space between sound and silence, art and science, chaos and calm. Gyro is a state of epic tranquility that transcends understanding. That moment, in the door, in free fall, mid-swoop, where nothing but the present exists. A perfect balance of euphoria and thrill. Gyro captures our passion for flying and our commitment to designing break-the-fucking-rules canopies that deliver pilots pure, wild flight. Hey gang, so I got a new book out. It's called The Upside of Fear, and it's exactly what you think it's about. It's about the good side of, well, getting scared. In it, we talk not only about the science and biology behind fear, but the psychology as well. And it's not just coming from me, it's coming from some of the best in the sport. Omar Alhigelan, Jeff Provenzano, Maxine Tate, and so many more have contributed their sometimes terrifying stories to the book to help you overcome your fear. So head to the lunaticfringepodcast.com. You're going to find the link to the book there, as well as the other books. It's available in ebook, paperback, hardback, and audiobook right now.
Coming straight from the cockpit, it's another episode of Lunatic Fringe with the fucking pilot.
Ready, set, go. Back in the can for another edition of the Lunatic Fringe podcast, and one that I've been looking forward to over the last few days, because this one's going to be a special one, I have no doubt. Let's get started. Who the fuck are you, and what do you do?
The fuck I am Steve Burrow. I am a guy that's loving life.
Loving life, and a big smile on your face, and you've been nothing but chipper every single moment that we've talked. Now, Steve, you told me pre-podcast you're retired, right?
That's correct.
What'd you used to be?
So I was a store manager, store director over a large grocery store for many, many years. But the last 12 years, I worked in home oxygen. It was my favorite job I've ever done, ever. I went to each people's house and helped them get acclimated to home oxygen and things that help them breathe better.
Oh, very nice.
Going to different homes in different neighborhoods with different people was just the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in my life.
Well, I can imagine you're kind of giving them a bit of freedom that they've probably lost if oxygen is something that they require.
That's correct.
So now, you were telling me before the podcast that a lot of your family members are in the healthcare industry. You said your daughter and your wife are both nurses?
Yes, my daughter is an ER nurse at a very uh, large, busy hospital in Dallas, Texas, and she likes the craziness of it all. Uh, it, Everything from car wrecks to gunshots to uh, had somebody walk in a few weeks ago, not walk in, but on an oil rig, he had gotten his lower part pretty much cut in half, and she thrives in that environment.
She's got a few stories
That
to tell, I'm guessing.
Oh my God, oh my God. My wife has been a labor delivery nurse for 28 years, 29 years.
I bet she's got a few stories to tell as well.
She does. Yeah, I'm so proud of both of them. They're wonderful people that happen to be related to me. So
So,
uh,
you said Dallas, Texas. I do detect a bit of a twang in that accent on your side.
yeah, born and raised here, yes sir.
Born and raised in Texas. I spent a little time in Texas. There's some spots that I actually really, really enjoyed. Austin was fantastic. Dallas was a beautiful city as well, but I ended up spending time in a teeny little place about 30 minutes outside of Waco.
What is it? I actually know a lot about that area.
I can't even think of the name of the place, but there's a skydiving operation out there.
Oh,
The
so go
Go
ahead.
ahead. The runway is literally right behind a truck stop off the highway.
I know where that's at. Good Lord, that is. Oh golly.
I can't think of the name of it.
I never jumped there, but I visited there several times. I had uh, they were about a little over an hour from me, and I had other drop zones. Uh, I had other drop zones that were closer to me, and I just never made it there. But they have a lot of wild parties, a lot of fun, and I knew people that jumped there.
Well, it's
So,
kind
God,
of,
the name may.
oh, it'll come to one of us during the podcast. Of that, I have no doubt. It was funny because I ended up there with the Chicago Twin Otter for a few months, and the people were amazing. I just didn't. The place was
Yeah,
not what I was expecting. Living behind a truck stop in a trailer that we nicknamed Eileen because it had a very bad tilt to one side.
and you had at the end of the runway was that big field, and then of course the drop zone's right next to the highway too. So
Yep.
you had to be, you had to be careful where you landed. It was
Yeah, yeah.
uh
So
yes
Steve, as I do with the beginning of all the podcasts, I want to jump you back to your beginnings in the sport and how you started skydiving. What made you
okay.
want to go out and jump?
So in 1992, uh, there's a place close to me in Ennis, Texas called Lake Bardwell. I used to take my two sons there fishing quite a lot. We would be fishing on Lake Bardwell. There was a drop zone right next to it called Slovak Air. And I would see these nuts jumping out of a plane. And of course, when I come down to where I could, within hearing range, I could hear them screaming and making happy noises that we make uh, uh, as skydivers. Uh, there were two or three times where I would take the boys after we were fishing and we'd go at the end of the runway or just close to the airport uh, and just watch them. And it was just so fascinating. And there was one time where I had a gentleman land out way out where I was, and it was just fascinating. It was so, we see, I don't know, I think we all are fascinated by the skydivers before we actually become skydivers. And we think of the movie stars that do it, and we don't realize that it's the same people we see at Walmart or at the drop zone.
Yep.
We're bald headed, we're fat, we're ugly, we're funny as hell. But anyway, this gentleman landed right close to my car, and he came over and shook my hand. Took him to the drop zone. We loaded up his parachute and everything, and took him to the drop zone. And he invited my sons and I to hang around. Of course, I had never been around skydivers, and it was the most wonderful experience. And within a month or two, became my birthday. And fast forward, I did a tandem there. The place was called Slovak Air, and it was back in 1992. Uh, I did the tandem, and just, oh my God, it opened my world. I did another tandem in 1993, and just was thinking I was content to do it on my birthday every year. So I guess I had turned 32 and 33. So on my 34th birthday, I started to do a tandem again. Instead, I went ahead and decided to do a static line program. So that's why I started lessons, and I progressed to the static line program. I got my license within the year. That next year, because I did the rental equipment and everything for the first year or so, and then I got my own gear, all my own equipment, and that would have been in '95. And of course, then I think AEDs existed, but
Yeah.
nobody had these back then.
No, they weren't great for sure. It's kind of funny because your origin story is actually similar to another skydiver you've probably heard of, a guy by the name of Bill Booth. So
I have heard of it.
Oh yeah, Uncle Bill, he got his start in skydiving when he was driving down the road to go do some other crazy thing Bill was going to do when an old round parachute landed in the middle of the road in front of him, and he took him back to the drop zone, and that's how Bill became a skydiver, and that's how we ended up, of course, with the 3-ring system for modern equipment. So you're in good company with picking up stray skydivers.
And this reminded me, I might as well tell the rest of this.
Yeah.
When I was back in second grade, it would have been in the middle 60s. And yes, for you youngsters, it's the 1960s. There was a little drop zone not far from my house. And my mom and dad would actually, we put a sandwich stuff together in an ice chest. Of course, you really didn't have Wendy's and McDonald's and Jack in the Box all then. It was that was our fast food, was putting a picnic together. But we would go out there and actually watch skydivers, and they were all round chutes.
Sure.
And oh my God, it was all military type equipment. It was fascinating. But we did that, I guess, off and on for 2 or 3 years. But I that's something I'm aware of, but I don't think that prompted me to start skydiving. Those guys that I was telling you about at the lake is what got me going.
Now, so you see this random jumper lands off, you give him a ride back, you get a taste of the community, you go out and do that first tandem, and clearly you loved it. You go out and do a second tandem. I'm guessing, because you said you've been married to your wife for 30, how many years?
37 years.
So 37 years. So she's around watching her respectable businessman husband throw himself out of a plane a couple of times. But what did your nurse wife think when you said, I want to start doing this?
So she has actually been extremely supportive. She does not have that adrenaline gene that I have. But she is extremely supportive of me. She believes in me. She is my best friend and has been my best partner my whole life. We still actually like each other. She has been great. I don't remember anything other than normal concern, but once she understood that I had researched it and that I believed in myself, then, like many other crazy things I've done, she just smiles and shakes her head and lets me do it.
That's awesome. Oh, and by the way, before I forget, fucking Temple, Texas.
Temple, yes.
Temple, Texas. I knew it was going to come. I knew it was going to come at some point. Yeah, so I spent about 2 months living in a trailer on the drop zone at Temple, Texas.
Oh my God, that truck! When you said there, I knew, because around Waco there was only a couple of ones that would be in that area. So yeah, Skydive Temple.
Yeah. Temple,
so did
Texas.
You make the stagecoach in? which is not far from you, and most people go to that are close there.
No, you know something? I ended up there because, without getting too far into it, I took the Chicagoland Twin Otter down to Mexico, and I was supposed to fly all winter in Mexico, and I ended up getting run out of Mexico at gunpoint, and ended up
No.
in. Oh yeah, I ended up in Temple because we needed a place to get the aircraft where it might be able to fly a little bit, but you can't taxi the Twin Otter down the highway, and my boss was understandably not happy that I'd been run out of Mexico, so he opted not to rent me a car to go drive around Texas.
Oh my God.
So
Oh,
when I
that's
say I lived on the drop zone, I mean I lived on the drop
oh
zone.
my God. I have so many stories. As anybody that's listening to this, I'm sure they all have stories, but some of the stories, if I was to tell, involved a porta potty we had in one drop zone that's got bullet holes in it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's funny. I was talking to a guy that jumped on that load that just before I jumped last week, and he landed out. He's a first time jumper, and we connected and have been talking since then. And he's one of the few tandems that, because you know how tandems are, they're just, it's so mundane and everyday, and so many times. Well, for whatever reason, they landed out pretty good ways from the airport. It was a safety issue, I think, that he just made the choice to make a good, safe landing
Mm.
farther away. So anyway, I was telling him that in the skydiving world, some of the best stories come from landing out. I mean, I have been that guy that's hitchhiking on the side of the road, in a two old men in a with the open cow trailer has picked me up to bring me back to the drop zone.
Yep.
I've been the guy that's had the thumb out, dragging your parachute, and I just, oh my God, I love those stories. I love those memories.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. In fact, one of my earliest memories in skydiving, I started jumping in Las Vegas, and I was right when free flying was just kind of becoming a thing. So when you started skydiving back when I did, you still had an RW suit. Well, I bought a
yes.
used RW suit from one of the instructors that was all white with blue and pink grippers. And you know how skydivers are. It's a different kind of fashion anyway. Well, I went
Yes.
out and jumped in North Las Vegas, which was a different drop zone. And I think I had less than 30 jumps at the time in that white jumpsuit with the pink grippers, and landed off in one of the worst neighborhoods in Las Vegas and
Oh
was,
my.
oh yeah, I was wearing a rental rig that was one of the flying Elvi rigs from the movie. So it was
Oh
all
my.
white. I've got
Great.
a white and
Great.
blue parachute over my shoulder, pink grippers, and I'm strolling around a horrible neighborhood trying to figure out where the hell I am.
I want to say too, while we're on this subject, I got into skydiving because that guy landed out.
Yep.
That that I may not have ever taken the step, because of course, we didn't have the internet back then, and all the wide range of ways that we are introduced to skydiving now to the youngsters.
Sure.
So, if that man had not, and I don't even know who his name is, but if he had not have landed out, I probably would not have got into skydiving.
Isn't
So,
that funny? It's so crazy how life just takes its little turns, and we're just
yeah.
kind of along for the ride. Now, so you experienced skydiving for the first time because of that off landing. You said you were out there with your sons.
Yes, yes, I
Now,
have two sons.
so what did your sons think when Dad starts heaving himself out of airplanes? They must have thought that was cool.
They were children then, and yeah, they thought it was cool. It was, and I think a lot of people can relate to this. When I first started jumping, everybody, my family, my friends would come out and watch it, and of course back then you had to put on it that you didn't have email or any of that, so it was all by word of mouth or corded telephone that you would call. uh, but after several times of them going out, and everybody's used to Six Flags where you go out and all of a sudden you ride the rides and you go to the next ride, you go to the next ride. And skydiving, you do a lot of waiting. And when you go to a drop zone that tandems pay the bills and fun jumpers or get pushed sometimes. So after that, people stopped coming as much. And over the years, ended up it just being me going.
Sure.
Now I did have one son. My first son, oldest, ended up being a Marine, and he's a badass mofo. He really is. But the sweet kid. But he went up in the plane with me, and he did an observation ride. We had him up by the uh, up the front so he could watch us, get out and go
Sure.
down. He come down. He told me, he said, "Dad, this just ain't for me. You point anybody out, I'll walk them in the mouth, but I'm not jumping out of a damn plane." Just what I'm like. But my second son jumped actually like 17 jumps, and girls happened, fast cars happened, jobs happened, and he just, I think he was going out of love and respect for me, and just uh, always thought he wanted to, but that wasn't his passion like it was mine.
Which is, I
Uh,
mean, honestly, when it comes to something like skydiving, having your family support your desire to do it is just as, if not more important than them coming out and doing it with you.
of course, yeah, because it got to where I would have to choose time with my family or time skydiving,
Mm.
and I know that doesn't work out well with everybody.
I was
But
I was gonna ask that because I mean by this point you're starting skydiving already as an established family man with a growing family. It had to have at some point because skydiving is an all-encompassing sport. It is so easy to fall 100% into it and it just becomes everything. But you don't have that luxury when you're raising kids and holding down the job and all that. So at what point did you kind of go, oh shit, this is tough?
there were several times. Uh, Honestly, probably about the first 5 years, skydiving was my main priority. Unfortunately,
Sure.
uh, I thought I was doing the balance well, uh, but to be honest, I leaned toward the skydiving. I took care of my job. I took care of what I needed to do with the family. I did what I thought I was supposed to be doing, but it, it it's mostly, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, but it's like a drug, and you have to decide at one point: do you take the drug or do you take the family? And
Sure.
and we've all seen the people that end up getting divorced, or they end up getting the tent and pitch it at the drop zone, and
Oh yeah.
you
Well,
know,
that's the old joke. What do they call it? They call it AIDS, aviation induced divorce syndrome.
yes, yes, yes,
It's well, I mean, it really is skydiving when you boil it down to it. Obviously, for all its amazing things, it's also a very selfish endeavor.
sure it is, sure it is.
I mean, we're essentially we're putting our lives on the line for a thrill, and even though we mitigate the risks as much as possible, we're still putting our asses out there. And when there's a family involved, it's a selfish thing, and that can be a real tough balancing act. But I applaud you for the fact that you recognized it before it got away from you.
It That's a point where my last probably 2 or 3 years, I went from jumping as much as I could to just staying current. It was I loved it, I enjoyed it, but I needed to spend more time with my sons as we're getting older. I need to spend more time with my daughter. I need to spend more time with my wife. Uh, it became clear to me where my priority needed to be
Sure.
focused.
Sure. Now you jumped actively from, you said you got your license in what, 95?
Yes, 95. Yes, yes.
95, and you said you stayed active till around 2006?
So my last jump was actually in 2005.
Okay.
I just got to where uh, a couple of things. The family thing, I really had gotten the balance good to where my wife she would do something to keep herself busy. She would go visit her mom. She would do things while I went and did my jump. And I maintained that balance. But I tell you, I got to where I didn't feel as sharp as I used to be.
Sure.
When driving, I didn't have the reaction that I knew I had before. It was just a little bit more pause than it used to be. I didn't have reactions to traffic. At work, I didn't feel as sharp as I used to. And I started questioning myself if something bad happens, because we all know most all jumps go fine.
Sure.
And where it counts is when you have a problem. You've got the rest of your life to work it out, but your rest of your life ain't going to be long if you don't work it out.
Yep.
So I lost confidence, is what it was.
Sure.
I kept my license up for the next year, but I didn't stay current. But I want to keep the license up just in case I picked it up, because over the years I'd seen so many people get out of the sport and get back in within the year or within 2 or 3 years. I didn't want to sell my equipment. I didn't want to let everything go, because I didn't want to have to rebuy everything at twice of what I had. But I let my license lapse. Parachutist magazine, I kept that for another 2 or 3 years because I just getting the information on it. But my USPA, when my license lapsed, of course they stopped sending that magazine.
Sure.
And then life happened and got busy, and I just thought, okay, I'm plus I picked up weight, I got older. I was 45 when I made my last jump.
Well, and it's kind of one of those things, right? You said you were losing a bit of focus and not quite as sharp, and then you said that you were also balancing it out with family, which means you were just keeping current, which is, as anybody in skydiving knows, just staying current is just a dangerous way to skydive.
Yes.
Only maintaining currency means that you're just not rusty enough that they let you go jump out of the plane. So it's already kind of a tough balancing act. I mean, obviously.
It's it's a time. And Dean, as you know, just you've lived a long time as I have. You make choices, and your choices dictate what kind of life you have.
Sure.
I chose family and the ground.
Sure.
And it's worked out for me. I tell people, people, maybe my young men in my life, either family or friends, and this may sound corny, but I believe this strongly, and I pass this on to the young ones. As you're living today, you're going to bed, you're waking up, you're working whatever job you do, you're going through your daily life, you're planting and tending a garden. Later on in your life, you're going to have to eat out of that garden. If you piss on that garden and not take care of it and not nourish it, then you're going to have a bunch of people that know you and are related to you, but you're just a relation.
Yeah.
So I believe that, and I wasn't perfect. I made mistakes, but I've tried to tend to my garden. I've tried to take care of it and nurture it. And in this last year, when I survived this sepsis, my garden has taken care of me. I made out of that garden.
Well, that brings us up to why I initially reached out to you. As a lot of the listeners know, I moderate for the Beginner Skydiving Forum, and I'm a really big fan of that page on Facebook. And I'll go through and check all the different posts that are coming out. And I came across this post of this huge smiling face on a tandem skydive, and read down that this guy in the picture here had himself, pardon my French, a really rough fucking year, and decided to snap out of that rough year by going and heaving himself out of an airplane. But man, I didn't even know the half of it. And I'll give away a bit of a spoiler as I get you to tell this story. You coded for more than 20 minutes.
It's 23:48 is when I was revived.
23, you were dead for 23 minutes and 48 seconds, and now you're sitting here talking to me about the fact that you made a tandem skydive a week ago. Tell me about it, man. I want to hear all about it.
My wife and daughter and other friends were in the room when I coded, and they watched me ride the lightning. They watched me get CPR'd. They broke my ribs up. Um, I am alive. I, I'm a Christian. I believe in God, but I understand everybody does it. No worries. But I believe God and my family and nurses and doctors that I can't tell you tried and didn't give up when it didn't look like I could survive.
Sure.
Didn't give up. That's why I'm here talking to you right now.
Now, what started this all out? How is it you ended up coded out on a table getting CPR in the first place?
So to be honest, I've had sepsis 3 previous times. None have been this serious, but it's if you don't know what sepsis is, it's good to educate you. It's a blood infection that has different sources. We never found my source, but I've had 3 other times. I've got a pacemaker defibrillator that got infected one time, and I got in the hospital for 2 weeks where they had to take it out and then wait a little bit till the infection was gone. Then they put another one back in me. I've had major knee replacement and reconstruction. So my knee replacements were much larger than most people's replacements. So I have a lot of metal in there, and evidently sepsis likes to hide around foreign objects in your body. So this particular time, that what I was telling you, I've had sepsis 3 other times. This was in a 5-year period.
Wow.
I'll kill me every time, but nothing this bad. I've always been able to come out of it. I was at my grandson's, and he was probably 10 years, 11 years old then. I was at my grandson's basketball tournament on a Saturday, stayed there for 3 games, did not feel bad at all. During the night, I started feeling bad. I do not remember anything from the next day, but obviously I tried to get out of bed. I collapsed. Wife called the ambulance. We live way out in the country. Took the ambulance away to get there. But they took me to Big Baylor, downtown Dallas, and I was put in ICU. And that's, I guess, 14 hours after I arrived, that's when I coded. And
wow.
Now, yeah, that
obviously you were saying, and I know next to nothing about sepsis, but you're talking to an audience of people that as a collection probably have more metal in their bodies than any other fucking group of people on the planet.
Yeah.
So what are the symptoms of sepsis? I mean, are there people that are more prone to it or more susceptible to it, or I mean, I don't want to obviously give anybody something to be nervous about, but maybe just to be aware of what should be thinking of.
So it's great to be aware of it. There's not I say there's not. I am not a medical person, so I'm sure somebody medical could give you da 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 da. But it hit me each time. It's like I took the 3rd time it hit me, I took my grandkids to school that morning, and by the time they got out that afternoon, I was disoriented and not conscious on the couch.
Wow.
And of course they took me to the hospital and all that. So it can come on you quick, but it happens. The people that I've known, it happened to went in for some kind of surgery and a wound got infected.
Okay.
Either going for a surgery or they were in the creek walking and scratched their toe. It's I don't want to scare everybody because you got to live life and you can't be afraid of getting sepsis or anything else. We all have a different journey. This was mine. I don't know why. I may never know why.
I think, I mean, definitely you're preaching to the choir when it comes to telling skydivers, go ahead and get out there and live and take the risks for sure. But again, So many. I mean, I've got a lot of metal in my body and probably not the last of it, so it's one of those things you always want to go, all right, that's something else to think about, something else to keep my eye on. Now, the reason that
I don't,
I mean, obviously after you got through coding, they kept you alive, but there were serious repercussions from this bout of
well,
sepsis with you.
I was actually, when they revived me, uh, I was in a coma for 3 weeks after that.
Holy shit.
Uh, 20 days. Uh, they had tried to um, pull me out of a coma a couple of times to see if I had brain activity. Um, my family was talked to about you have to be prepared for brain damage. You have to be prepared that he may never leave the hospital. Uh, it was challenging on them, but they were approached about pulling life support more than once.
Wow.
And each time they made the choice to keep me on life support, and they would deal with whatever they had to once I got out.
Sure.
That was where my garden was feeding me.
Mm.
Right
So
there.
now, when did the surgeries take place? Were you out of the coma before the surgeries took place, or was that
I,
afterwards?
I woke up 20 days later, and I had no idea this had happened. Of course, I didn't have any recollection of me getting sick. I literally just woke and had this tube down my throat, couldn't talk, couldn't ask questions. I felt like I was being restrained, uh, and I just didn't understand. My wife and my daughter and my son was all like leaning over the hospital bed, and they were trying to explain to me that basically I got sick and was in the hospital, and some version of we're doing the best we can, we love you, and all this. And it was 3 days later that I was able to. They pulled the intubation tube out, and I was able to ask questions. Um, okay, so this is a funny story that only kind of I have not told this story to anybody else outside of my family, but I had a problem with hemorrhoids. There's a point to all this, okay?
Okay.
I had before this happened. So my ass was swelled up like a baboon. So when of course when I'm in they're feeding me through a tube, and God, when I wake up, Dean, I didn't tell you, but I've got 9 machines going, beeping, and I got tubes going everywhere. I got tubes everywhere, but they've got a catheter in, but they don't have a tube in my butt. So they're feeding me by tube, but I'm pooping and I don't know. I just it's just willy nilly. My body's just doing what it does, and some of those nurses were not very gentle with my baboon ass. And one of the first things I said, that I was told the nurse that I love her to death. She's great, but please stay out of my ass. Just oh my God, it was so painful. And it's the funniest thing because uh, in my new life in this past year, I have had hemorrhoids once since all this. I don't recommend this cure for hemorrhoids, but it's been wonders for me.
I was gonna say that's a hell of a silver lining to the cloud, my man. So now the end result of the sepsis is you obviously you were coded for quite a while. You spent time in the coma and all of that, but you had to have a lot of surgical procedures as well and have lost quite a lot out of it.
I have so the the reason I felt uh, the reason I felt like I was restrained was I had developed what they call necrosis, and the medical people will know the necrosis. But basically, they they used the machines and all the medical thingamabobs to keep my core alive, my heart, my liver, my kidney. But I mean, like my kidney was failed. I was on 24 hours dialysis.
Wow.
Uh, but my arms to my elbow and my legs were black, looked like a burn victim.
Mm.
Uh, I have my daughter-in-law is a black lady, and I was darker than her
Mm,
on my
wow.
arms and legs,
Mm,
and love her to death. But we would put her arms next to each other, or she would put it next to mine. I could not lift my arms
wow.
uh, for multiple months. So fast forward, that was in February. In February 18th, I think, is when I went in the hospital. Give 3 weeks for the coma, and then on March 30th, uh, on March 30th, they took my legs above my knees. So I've got little stumps. I just I've got these little stumps for legs now.
Sure.
Uh, on April 12th, they took my part of my hand, my fingers,
Yeah.
both both hands. So uh,
Which I'll tell you what, let me give you a compliment before I forget. You still text faster than some of my friends.
this is my texting point right there.
I mean, you don't have any damn fingers and you text faster than some of my friends, man. Good for you.
You bet. I'm gonna tell you, it's so uh, Dean, and I don't know if it's the direction you want to go, but I'm gonna go here now. While you're faced with something like this, and we're all faced with different things at different times, and it's just because I've lost my limbs. I know there are people out there that have worse things happen to them than this. I'm going to get better. I'm going to adjust. There are people that are not going to get better. There are
Yeah.
people that get cancer diagnosis and they're not going to be alive a year from now. I have a very bad looking uh, disability, and yet I feel like I'm one of the most able-bodied disabled people you're ever going to meet.
Sure.
I'm grateful for every damn day.
Well, I mean, honestly, that's exactly what made me reach out was I've been in skydiving 28 years now. I've seen a lot of people with disabilities make skydives. I've taken a lot of people with disabilities on skydives, and the one thing that I can say most of them have is an outlook that is generally far and away better than able-bodied people that don't really know what they have, right? And you said it yourself before we were talking on the podcast, you have these challenges that have been set in front of you that you're embracing just like you did when you were learning how to skydive, you know?
Yep.
It's another challenge. It's another you said because you retired, what'd you say, 6 years ago?
Correct.
So yeah, you say you retired 6 years ago and that life wasn't it wasn't mundane, but it wasn't exciting. It was just a nice life. But now it's a nice life that's also challenging as hell, and you are embracing it completely, which is fucking amazing.
Oh, Dean, I just now, number one, I need this said because um, I get all these accolades and I get a lot of pats on the back and man, you're strong, man, you're inspiring and all this. What all of y'all don't see is the army that I have behind me.
Hmm.
My wife, my children, my grandchildren, my family, my friends. That's an army that's been praying for me, that encourage me, that are happy for me on my successes and love me and accept me on my failures. Um, what you don't see is the army that I am
Sure.
because of my family.
Sure.
So I want to have that
Now,
that said.
here's the real question. So we're talking about what, just about a year after this all starts.
Yeah.
You're still actively recovering there. You know, you're at the beginning of a long road. Um,
Yep.
when the idea to go out and make a tandem skydive crossed your mind, the ball's on you to go to your wife and your family and go, hey, you know how I
Yeah.
just survived all of that stuff? I want to go jump out of an airplane. Did you think about that? Or was it just like, I have to do this?
Yeah.
This is.
One thing, Dean, that I've said several times, uh, and I believe it to my core, I have spent the last year surviving.
Mm,
My life is going to be about living.
nice.
It's different. There's a different there's a different thing when you make the conscious decision to be alive, not just survive and not just live, but to be alive. Uh, I believe it's a choice, Dean, and we almost went to it a while ago. When you're faced with something that sucks so bad, and this, trust me, this sucks. I mean, it, it's challenging. Uh, Man, we all poop once or twice a day. You don't know what trouble it is just to go poop. And yet, I can do it. I figured out a way.
Sure.
It's not like you do it. It's not like I used to do it. It's the way I do it.
Sure.
Uh, and once I embraced the choice of I'm going to do the best I can, I'm going to stack successes on each other, little bitty wins, little bitty wins, little bitty victories. And all of a sudden you look back and like, man, 2 weeks ago I couldn't do, you know, fill in the blank. Man, 6 months ago I couldn't do fill in the blank.
Sure.
And suddenly you realize you're a fucking warrior.
Yeah.
Man, just you realize how badass you can be if you allow yourself to be.
Sure. You know, it's funny. The sport of skydiving obviously attracts a million different kinds of people from a million different backgrounds. But one thing that a lot of jumpers seem to have in common is when they get faced with real hardships, they almost always rise to the challenge, right? I mean, I've had a number of guests on the show that have had just incredibly dire accidents and have, laid in hospital beds with doctors standing over them saying, you're never going to do this again, you're never going to do that again, and have
Ooh.
taken that on instead of as a dire prediction. They've taken that as a challenge and rised to that challenge, and it's always an amazing thing to see, and amazing more than anything to see the mentality that goes in behind it. And I'd like to think that it's the sport that draws people like that into it.
May I say, Dean, I agree with you, but in the amputee community, there's a whole world that I didn't know existed. We have amputee conventions, we have get-togethers, we have it's a really strong brother and sisterhood with like-minded people. Now there are amputees that don't involve themselves. There are amputees that don't join into all this, but the ones that I have met the most amazing, strong, supportive, enthusiastic people, more than you could ever imagine. I have met so many people that I just love, and I'm active in my amputee community now. I've been fortunate enough to I've gone to the hospital and talked to amputees. Went to rehab and spoken to amputees. Um, uh, I believe people that have cared for me like my attitude on life and think that I have some credibility that I can maybe help them at a time where they're wondering where the hell what's next.
Sure.
I try to tell them, you do not let anyone else tell you what you can or can't do. You can't do it the way they, like I said, well, you can't do it the way they can't do it the way you used to, but by God, you can figure something out most of the time. Do not let anyone else tell you what you can or can't do.
Absolutely.
You have a choice.
It's and it's I've seen it in a number of different people and in a number of different ways. I had a great guy, a guy by the name of Ammon McNeely, that I was lucky enough to help teach him how to skydive at the very beginning, and he was also a hardcore professional rock climber, and through accident and circumstance, he actually lost one of his legs, I believe below the knee, but he was still a very active climber even as an amputee. but he had a great sense of humor. His nickname was Pirate, and Pirate had a hell of a sense of humor. And on one particular climb, he actually, halfway up the wall, I believe it was in Yosemite, climbing up El Capitan, his leg came off and fell.
Oh
And
my God.
one of our mutual friends, of course, he was joking about it and posting pictures of the fact that his leg fell off while climbing the wall. And then the next thing I know, I'm scrolling through Instagram, and another good friend of ours who was also learning to skydive at the same time that he was found his damn leg just accidentally. And of
Uh,
course, it was the funniest thing in the world. And if you're not in, and I'm sure it's in many, many sports and in many, many circles, the skydiving community tends to have a very robust sense of humor when it comes to,
yeah, sure.
when it
Yep.
comes to dark matters. We can handle it pretty well. And so, of course, to us, it just seemed hilarious that our buddy's leg fell off climbing El
Sure,
Capitan.
sure.
To the rest of the world, they're like, oh my God, how can you be so insensitive? But it's my experience that, especially if you are someone that's had to go through something like that, chances are you're a shitload tougher than people may give you credit for.
I believe that. Yep.
Yeah,
Can,
of
can I name drop something here too?
course you can. Absolutely.
You're going to know this name. A lot of the youngsters aren't going to. Dana Bowman.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, Dana is still active on demos and such. I was blessed enough to be able to part of his ground crew at a jump he did. Of course, I'm in my chair, and it's I knew Dana back when I had legs and arms, just from the magazines and the story and everything, and to be able to meet him and when I say part of the ground crew, he had my wife and I help keep his landing area clear. He only had one guy with him, but that was such a neat thing for me to meet this guy and know all that he has accomplished after such a tragic accident.
Sure.
You in this world, the word inspire is thrown out so much, but that man inspired me. And he was part of, and Dana and I are friendly. We're acquaintances, but we're not good friends. I mean, that's, I reserve good friend status for someone that I visit with a lot.
Sure, of course.
But Dana influenced me. Seeing his success and his ability to move forward past that tragic. And for anybody listening to this, if you don't know the story of Dana Bowman, I suggest you just simply YouTube Dana, Dana, Bowman, simple spelling,
Sure.
Bow. Dana is man. That man has been through a lot and accomplished a lot.
Well, the
Before
great
and
thing,
after skydiving.
the great thing for me in skydiving is it's such a tight community that you don't necessarily have to be particularly close friends. They're people that you might only see on the drop zone, and you might only see them every other weekend, but they're fast friends. And I do not use the term band of brothers lightly. Obviously, it's brothers and sisters, but we take on an activity that is inherently dangerous and incredibly intense, and that forms a bond in a way that I don't think a lot of things do. It's not like going and meeting up with your bowling group once a month, because bowling balls aren't getting thrown at you at a couple hundred miles an hour. I mean, it's a very intense thing, and you find yourself that even though I might not particularly like a fellow skydiver as a person, I still ultimately respect what they do because they're out there jumping with me. And that's not something that generally gets around a lot. But when you have somebody like him that's gone through adversity and come out the other side just a rock star, especially finding yourself in the situation that you're in, absolutely he'd be considered a friend and be incredibly inspirational.
I want to take this time too. This seems like a good place to put it. So it's been 20 years since I jumped. Back in 1995, that's where I tested at Skydive Dallas, was where I tested for my license. And it was a good ways from me, so I didn't jump there often, but I jumped there several times over the years. I think the last time I jumped there was probably 2003. I would go out on the Texas big ways and just random things, but it wasn't my home drop zone. So 20 years later from my last jump, but actually 22 or 23 years since I was at Skydive Dallas last. Now it's Skydive Spaceland Dallas.
Mm.
And I could not have been more welcomed, more loved on, and more felt like I had several of them tell me, and if they see this podcast, they'll know who they are. But several of them hug me or just tell me, "You're still one of us. It's been a long time, but you're still one of us. Once you've got the nuts to jump out of the plane, you're always going to be one of us." And I can't tell you what that meant to me and my family after 20 years of not jumping. To get loved on like that
Sure.
was amazing. So big kudos to Skydive Dallas Spaceland. It was just wonderful.
I remember I think it was a couple of years back a good friend that jumped out of Northern California had made a post that it had been a great run and he just adored skydiving, but as his family was getting older, the juice just kind of wasn't worth the squeeze anymore, and he was going to be stepping away from the sport. And you could tell that it was killing him to say, "Hey, I can't be a skydiver anymore." And I and a bunch of people responded, "Even if you never touch a parachute again, you will always be a skydiver. Doesn't matter if you're jumping anymore. One of us, you're always one of us. Always."
Well, I want to give a lot of love towards Skydive Spaceland Dallas because they walk the walk.
Mm.
They treated me as one of their own. So many wonderful experiences that just one-on-one. As a group, they were great. One-on-one. And there's guys that weren't born when I
Sure.
last, and were hugging me and, just greatness. And they gave me much respect as the older skydiver that I was.
Sure. Well, to tip
No,
the hat as them as well. When I on a humorous note, when I made my escape from Mexico, that's the first place I landed, and they gave me a place to park the plane and
Skydive
keys.
Dallas.
Yeah. They gave me a place to park the plane and keys to the toilet, and so I was pretty goddamn happy about that too.
Yeah, they were super otters back then too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That they didn't end up using me. That just happened to be the place that we could arrange to
Oh yeah,
land
yeah.
and give me a couple of days to decompress and kind of catch my breath after the experience. But
Uh,
so hey, as we get towards the tail end of things, I want you to, obviously we've been talking quite a lot about it, but to anybody out there that might be facing some hurdles coming up, or they're not sure what comes next, what kind of advice do you have to give them as somebody that's still in the middle of the challenge yourself?
So I think every day that we wake up, we make a choice on how we're going to handle or deal with or respond. You use whatever word you use, but every day we have a choice on how we respond to things that suck. I believe that I've shown my children, my grown children, and my grandchildren, and people that care about me, I've shown them a different way to deal with things that suck.
Mm.
You and anybody listening to this, at any point during the day, you can decide to respond in a fun way. You can decide, and it's a decision, how you deal with the house that sucks. There are people that have gone before you. Whatever you're facing, there are people that have gone before you. Seek them out. Seek out how they got out of it. However you do it, but make the choice to be better. Make the choice to respond in a positive way that's going to make you have a better life. People that love you and care about you depend on you doing that. I don't care how lonely you are. You're somebody's mom, you're somebody's dad, you're somebody's brother or sister, you're somebody's friend. Somebody cares about you, and they depend on you pulling out or whatever the hell it is that brought you to that dark place. You do not have to stay there. You do not. There are places that will help you. There are people that will help you.
Absolutely.
Don't stay.
Now,
But it's your own fucking choice.
absolutely it is. Absolutely. Now, speaking
Yes.
of reaching out, tell me and everybody else what your Facebook handle is, because I have a feeling there'll be one or two people that'll want to reach out and message, and maybe somebody that would like somebody to talk to, or they just want to follow your story and see when you're going to make your next jump. How do they find you on Facebook?
So first off, if anybody wants to talk to me and if I can help them, please PM me, whatever. I'll get to you eventually. When I say eventually, end of the day, next day, whatever. But unless you're some weirdo that I can see as a creep, and I'll drop a rock. But if you're just somebody that needs some help, dude or dudette, I'm there.
Awesome.
So my name is Steve, Steve, Burrow, Burrow. I'm on Facebook, and it's as simple as that. I look forward to your friend request, and when somebody friend requests me, I always creep you. I always make sure you're not one of these political idiots.
Hell yeah, you need to.
I'm political, but I don't want to read everybody else's shit.
Well, I mean, that was, I've talked about it on the podcast before. We all have our political opinions, and we all have our opinions of the way the world is. But I tend to realize that the only person that really gives a damn about my political opinions is me. That's kind of the way it should be. It's already a contentious enough world. I don't need to add to it, which is why I so much enjoy and seek out amazing conversations like this. And I'll tell you, Steve, I cannot thank you enough for taking time this morning to sit down and talk to me, to tell us the story. And I can't wait to see when the next jump comes out and to track your progress. I
didn't tell you, but we were going to jump a second time, and weather knocked us out. So I haven't paid for a jump.
Hell yeah.
I'm sorry. I want to say one thing, Dean, since I have this platform that I for. Listen, bad things happen in this life, but you're never alone. We all have adverse things happen. You can beat this. You can be better. Even if you get a terminal diagnosis, the rest of your life can be better than you think sometimes.
Without a doubt.
You owe yourself.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, this is a great world. Thank you.
There's always the next morning, right?
Always.
Once again, Steve, thank you so much, man.
Buddy, thank you.
Take care.
See ya.
Well, there you have it. Another episode of the Lunatic Fringe podcast, brought to you as always by, well, wait, not as always, actually. Brought to you now by Gyro. Formerly known as NZ Aerosports, you'll head to gyro.com for their next level line of canopies. By Pussfoot, the Extreme Sports Collective. Head over to pussfoot.com to check it out. By Summit Parachute Systems, check out summitparachutesystems.com to talk to Jarrett Martin and the gang about kick-ass pilot rigs, rigging courses, and more. By Flyaway Indoor Skydiving, go to flyawaytn.com and check out all the cutting-edge stuff to come. By Pure Spectrum CBD, head to purespectrumcbd.com to check out their wide range of CBD products. And as for us, head to the lunaticfringepodcast.com to listen to any of the hundreds of episodes currently available, hit the link for our YouTube channel, pick up your copy of the Lunatic Fringe book or The Accidental Stripper, and get a sneak peek at upcoming guests. Once again, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.